we're starting to see people sort of putting the puzzle pieces together of this new network economy. The biggest challenge of the industry currently is that we're sitting with all these legacy systems and processes that is coming like 100 years plus. How do we get out of that and move into this new world of technological change and networks and social and mobile, etc.? The regulations have actually protected the industry up to now, but as the regulators catch up, it'll be a big risk for the industry.
So how? A new way of asking what life and health insurance does and what our customers will expect in future. It's what we'll explore in this final podcast of the series. Hello, I'm Ross Campbell, leading on digital at Gen Re. Our short series of podcasts has brought you more of the fine detail from our global research into technology and change for discussion and exploration with you, your team, your company, and our innovation partners. Episode 10 of 10.
Innovation is not the sole domain of startups. By rough estimates, if you look at the value created through innovation in the world, maybe half of it comes from startups, maybe half of it comes from incumbents. And so I'm a big believer in the idea that large incumbents have assets that, if properly harnessed or unharnessed, would create opportunities not just to create new value propositions or new channels or new digital, but truly to redefine what is the job to be done and deliver that value.
The word legacy often crops up in this context, but insurance is very often a leader in innovation. Despite being a mature industry in a digital world, we can channel new ideas and create new relevance. What we offer is fundamental in people's lives.
The insurance industry, which is a heavily regulated, risk-averse industry, attracts talent generally that defaults to the least riskiest route, the route of least risk. The biggest challenge for big financial services companies is to iterate and innovate within the confines of regulatory and brand constraints. So if you're trying to iterate and you're using your own brand, you run a significant risk of damaging your brand if you release something to the market that's not perfect. This is why collaboration with small players, specifically startups, provides a huge window of opportunity to big companies because they can test ideas with small companies without having to take on the risk of having it damage their brand if something goes wrong. Furthermore, big companies are great at scaling things, but they're not great at creating them. And small companies are great at creating things, but they're not really good at scaling them.
And I think in practice, we also, need to be realistic where we run big businesses, that you can't disrupt and transform a big organization beyond a certain pace. So you need to renew yourself and look at new ways of doing things. And certainly, I think, innovate around the client experience, first and foremost, and to try to be as client-centric as possible with your solutions and so forth. But that you partner, with outsiders, maybe elsewhere in your business, or even consider potentially competing with yourself in certain spaces where you say other initiatives that are far more flexible and dynamic and so forth. So then you're a player in the more traditional space, but also in the new world.
Playing in the old and the new world simultaneously has its challenges for insurers, for reinsurers, and the startups and tech firms they choose to work with. How can we join the dots and deliver results that turn this into business as usual?
The industry, at the moment, it's at a very exploratory stage. It's at a stage where there's a huge amount of education that needs to be done among the industry players, among the insurers, among the reinsurers, among the brokers, among the startups themselves, in terms of how these companies work and how they can best collaborate.
I don't know, I think we're really seeing kind of a convergence between the startups, the incumbents, and the investors as well that are you're seeing a lot of insurance companies build in their own internal corporate innovation and corporate venture capital arms. And I think they're really starting to get a whole picture of what's going on in the industry.
At Gen Re, we work on a very collaborative basis with technology companies. We partner with people who have a shared vision and a determination to make a difference, whether it's engagement, building resilience, helping claimants back to work, or even blockchain solutions. We have lots of big ideas and we're learning how to put them into practice.
Reinsurers who are used to dealing with large global insurers as their clients, insurers who are used to dealing with large broker networks or big distribution partners as their intermediaries. It's really hard for them to put themselves in our shoes. And our shoes, we have a completely different set of priorities. So we like to move fast. We like to have quick decisions. A quick no is far better than a slow maybe. I'd much rather have you say, this is something that we do and we'd like to work with you, or this is something that we know that we don't do and we don't want to work with you, and do that in a week, than spend 6 months going backwards and forwards and meeting lots of interesting people and having dinners and being wined and dined and never getting an actual answer out. That is my number one bugbear about interfacing with the insurance industry, is that some people think it's the right thing to do to treat me like a big company, and I don't. I just need a quick no. So the people who give me quick no's, I always say those are the best companies to work with as a startup. So I think that's really, really important.
The number one problem that a lot of our champions have in sort of these corporates is the business unit integration, which that requires the cultural change. The big corporates are playing chess, the startups are playing checkers. They're two different games. And creating platforms like Play and Play to helping them meet in the middle somehow and start learning each other's language, which is not like one side has to come here and the other side moving here. It's meeting in the middle ground. It's that both sides have to, make a move and an effort to understand each other.
Of course, bringing new complex ideas to an old complex business is a challenge. Best we start small and scale up. But you feel it's time to make a start. 3 years ago, the view was that real change was at least 5 years off. 2 years ago, the question altered to ask, what's everyone else doing? This year, more and more of our clients are asking us, what solutions do you have that we can connect to and begin to develop?
Insurance companies have to have the courage to change across the piece in all aspects of their business, as well as thinking at the same time as how do we deliver a different product in a different way and engage with our consumers differently. Across the piece, we can help people understand where the industry is moving. And part of what we're doing here is doing exactly that, in that we are looking and saying, this is what the world is talking about. This is not just a local event. This is something that's taking place across the world and making people aware of it. So raising awareness, I think, is a key aspect for a reinsurer. And then I guess for those people who are aware, it's helping and facilitating them in the move as they move to think about these things, change things, do things differently. My biggest concern is that I can see trends taking place where the insurance companies are not interested in doing what needs to be done to be relevant in the future. So our customers potentially could become non-customers because they are just not changing. And I think that's a real danger for us. I mean, we, in a sense, have to engage almost outside the industry. We have to engage to people who maybe not in insurance, who are thinking about insurance because they could be our future customers. Anybody looking from outside the insurance industry will look and say the people to partner with are the reinsurers because they have the capital. And if the person outside the market is able to bring access to the client and an understanding of the client, I think disruptors in particular coming in from outside the industry are going to look to the reinsurance market. And I think they are. I think that's already happening.
But we need to be aware of the influence of regulation over innovation, and particularly over industry collaboration in a digital world.
It's difficult. We have competition laws that stop us collaborating on some things, and it's a careful path to tread to say, how do we as an industry make a fundamental change and then draw in and create collaborative ecosystem pieces that are clearly in the interest of consumers but are not misperceived to be in some way anti-competitive. I think that's one of those paths that we have to tread as an industry that is difficult sometimes when arguably regulators or politicians or the public at large have an innate belief that things that we do are not in the interests of consumers. So I think there's opportunity there, but it's going to be challenging to make that emerge in the right way.
regulation, I think, prohibits too far a collaboration. And I think that needs to be thought about, and then that needs to be driven, in a sense, by the regulators. The regulators themselves need to start and say, hang on, we should regulate differently. I think the regulators are very protective of the industry. They're protective of the clients and the consumers, but they haven't really thought about whether that protection is actually prohibiting the industry from an innovation perspective and a change perspective, which would actually then in the long run be benefit to the consumer.
In terms of regulation and legislation, I think we're at a very, very confused juncture at the moment. So on the one hand, I think what's happening in financial services is the sudden, I don't know, burden of even more regulation that's coming through is trying to patch up rather messy blockages from an old 20th century system. And so we're trying to kind of just correct and Tipex out things in the old rule book while we're rewriting a new rule book, and that is just going to be a transient thing. And I think that's, in the long run, is almost going to be a waste of time.
Where we fall down on at the moment is I don't think that we are, as an industry, getting together and actually having a concerted effort to find solutions to the problems. We mustn't be in a situation where we've got the regulator telling us what we need to do. We must rather be in a position where, as an industry, we say these are the current problems that we are facing. Get together with both the industry and get together with the regulator and actually find solutions to those problems.
You can see areas where the industry, both in the UK and in other geographies, can work together to create, if you like, not-for-profit utility plumbing or wiring that it can use behind the scenes in order to innovate upfront for customers.
I think blockchain is most efficient, or distributed ledgers is most efficient if you actually get the whole industry involved. So we can cut so much cost out of the claims process if we can just automate our claims.
So it's in the interest of the industry, it's in the interest of reinsurers, it's in the interest of the regulator and the end customer to ensure that these conversations do take place. I'm encouraged that Gen Re is beginning to take that leadership stance in actually ensuring that this conversation takes place. Where it's going to go, we don't know, but at least from the first step, we will be able to determine where to take it to. So there's no agenda here, but the agenda is let's begin a conversation.
And that's our invitation to you. Let's have that conversation on digital. We really want to talk about it. Speak to your local Gen Re contact or get in touch with me direct. For now, goodbye, and thank you for listening to this series of podcasts.